Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Lauren Christella, and I'm the President and CEO of the Committee of 70. Committee of 70 is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization based here in Philadelphia, but serving the Commonwealth, promoting, supporting, and facilitating government ethics and election integrity for more than a century. We are so proud to partner with Eastern State Penitentiary, Councilmember Isaiah Thomas, the League of Women Voters of Philadelphia, and the Pennsylvania Prison Society for this important conversation on civic engagement and criminal justice reform. Tonight's event is especially timely. On or before, if you're a mail-in voter, May 20th, Philadelphians will vote on a ballot measure to establish a prison community oversight board and an Office of Prison Oversight. This is an important step toward creating a justice system that reflects transparency, accountability, and public engagement, all things Committee of 70 is always in support of. Currently, the conditions in our city prisons, including severe staffing shortages, unsafe environments, and systemic dysfunction, fall far short of those values. They endanger the people who are incarcerated, the staff who work there, and the public's confidence in the system. These failures are not just operational. They strike at the core of our democratic values. Establishing oversight is a meaningful step forward, but passing the ballot measure is only the beginning. If voters say yes, and we hope you will, it will be up to City Council to ensure this board and office have clear responsibilities and the authority and resources they need to be successful. And this ballot question is just one of a part of a much broader civic moment. This election, voters will vote for district attorney and elect judges at every level, critical roles that shape our justice system every single day. Civic engagement and criminal justice are closely intertwined, and this conversation is one way we can help deepen public understanding of that connection. Now, I am honored to introduce our panelists, each of whom bring deep experience, leadership, and insight into this conversation. I'll start with Philadelphia City Council member Isaiah Thomas. At-large Philadelphia City Council member Isaiah Thomas was born and raised in Northwest Philadelphia, where I'm choosing to raise my family, if you see the kids in the back there, and firmly believes in the transformative power of education, opportunity, and coalition building to foster a thriving Philadelphia. Now in his second term, Councilmember Thomas proudly serves as City Council's majority whip, focusing on legislative efforts that underscore his vision to make Philadelphia work better for every family, empower communities, and strengthen civic education across the city. Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. Next is Morgan Robinson, President of the League of Women Voters of Philadelphia, where I used to be president and still proudly serve on the board under her phenomenal leadership. Morgan is a lifelong resident of Philadelphia with extensive experience in the nonprofit sector. She's worked for the Please Touch Museum, Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania, and for the American Cancer Society. Currently, she's the Associate Director of Foundation Relations at the American Heart Association for Cancer Research and serves as President of the League here in Philadelphia. She's also an alumna of 70's Buckholz Fellowship Program. It's proudly also 70. Next up, Noah Barth. Noah serves as the Prison Monitoring Director for the Pennsylvania Prison Society, America's oldest nonprofit organization focused on human rights. In this role, Noah supports 250 prison monitors entering prisons and jails daily to assist individuals with addressing their concerns and oversees monitoring tours and manages special projects. Prior to the Prison Society, Noah spent 5 years in higher education, providing high-quality liberal arts education to incarcerated people. And this is my favorite part. This conversation will be moderated by Dr. Curry Sautner, who I also call Dr. Rockstar. She is president and CEO of Eastern State Penitentiary Historic Site, where she leads efforts to connect the history of incarceration with contemporary justice reform through inclusive, visitor-centered programming. Previously, she served as the Chief Learning Officer at the National Constitution Center, where she was also my first boss after I graduated grad school. And she oversaw national civic education initiatives in all aspects of the center's visitor experience and educational programming. I will take a moment of privilege to say that the city of Philadelphia is so lucky to have these leaders among us, and particularly Dr. Sautner's vision for Eastern State Penitentiary and what a place grounded in Philadelphia can mean for criminal justice reform across the country, and what she did for the Constitution Center and civic education, becoming a national hub there. I am so excited to see what she can do here at Eastern State. So we are thrilled to have such thoughtful voices with us tonight, and now I will turn things over to Curry.
Thank you, Lauren. And for the next chapter, I'll have my mom come up here and tell you even more. Welcome, everyone. It's an honor to have you all here tonight. As everybody was coming in, what I could hear were people that have been with Eastern State for years, but a whole bunch of people who have never been here before. And I want to welcome all of you to this site and to this center that we all sit in. One thing that we want to make sure with Eastern State every time somebody engages with us online, on site, or anywhere around the country, we want to make sure that people understand that this isn't just a relic of the past. It is a place and a center where justice, education, and the opportunity to do more convene. That is the important power of this site. And we use it to tell the world that this is where criminal justice reform began. This is where this conversation began. And what's so perfectly fitting for tonight's conversation is that it began with a few community members, people coming together and way back in the day and saying, hey, when we talk about liberty and freedom, when we talk about the pursuit of happiness during the Declaration, during the ideas behind the Constitution, we also have to grapple with when we take it away, when the government chooses to take it away. And what is the role of people and what is the role of citizens in that oversight? Because at the end of the day, the Constitution that frames us is a social contract between people and the government. And it begins with the words of who's in power, and that's we the people. So as we dive into this conversation tonight, I want to let you all know what we believe is truly important is about how do we take these conversations and these learning and do more with it to have civic engagement and civic action take us to the next step. Learn more, say something, do something. So thank you for gathering with us today. We get to talk to these three brilliant minds about this initiative, and we'll frame Eastern State even stronger in the history with, we like to call our parent, the Prison Society, who really is the genesis of all of that power and all of that energy. So let's dive in. So Councilman Thomas, we really need to begin with you. And for everybody here and people that are watching online, not everybody's at the same point of understanding what this is, why they should be paying attention to it, and what's the goal behind it. So could you dive into a little bit, give it that framing? Where did the idea come from? What are you really trying to move forward, and why?
So good evening. I'm going to give the brief version of that answer
Okay.
because I probably can take up most of the time just diving into that. But again, I'm Councilman Thomas. Thank you for having me. Thank you to all of our hosts, the panelists. It's an amazing evening to be here with you all. The weather is beautiful, so that's a sign always right there. When I think about this particular piece of legislation that we technically have already passed out of City Council, the reason that we're gathered here today is that because this particular bill is what's called a charter change. And when you do a charter change, you need to have the citizens of Philadelphia vote on whether or not you get permission. There are plenty of times we do legislation that has a charter change, so that part is pretty normal. This is my first time having a bill that's a charter change. So we've been advocating to the constituents across the city of Philadelphia to vote yes on ballot question number 3. And the reason we're asking for it is because ballot question number 3 creates a new board to oversee prisons in the city of Philadelphia. So currently, there is technically a board that oversees the prisons, but the problem that we've found with that board is that the board doesn't have any teeth. And so the goal was to create, or put us in a position to have some level of oversight that essentially solves that problem and has teeth. So this board would be made up of 9 members if passed and approved by we the people. 4 members will be approved by City Council, appointed and approved by City Council. 4 members would be appointed and approved by the mayor, and 1 person would be appointed, approved, or the controller herself can take the seat. So that's the 9-member board. We tried to do it in a way where it was balanced across levels of representation. So the executive branch gave 4 picks and the legislative branch gave 4 picks. And I think the most important thing with this board is that the makeup will allow it to give a recommendation around the prisons commissioner, whether or not that person should be retained or contract renewed. When looking for a new prison commissioner, can make a recommendation there. But the most significant part about this board is that it has a budget that's tied to the prison budget that gives it the ability to investigate. And that's extremely important, and that's really what inspired the actual legislation. The reality is that this wasn't my idea, right? Far too often, elected officials take credit for stuff that we didn't think of, but I'm okay with saying this was not my idea. And I think people like that, right? People like to hear that a constituent came to a politician with a problem and a prospective solution, and the politician said, oh, yes, you're right. Let's see if we can explore that. So years ago, while I was in my first term, and before folks started running for mayor in the 2023 race, a group of advocates came to Councilmember Helen Gim. And actually, Councilmember Helen Gim was the person who started this work as it relates to this particular piece of legislation. She clearly decided to resign from city council to pursue some political adventures that she essentially went on. And when she did that, the bill didn't have a home. So prior to her transitioning, her and I talked about a number of things, including this legislation, and it was an honor to be able to kind of pick up the baton where she left it off. And it took about 2 years to run it across the finish line, and I guess technically we haven't crossed the finish line yet because we the people haven't said that this is what we want as a city. So I'll stop right there for the purpose of allowing other questions as it relates to the panel. I probably can do a deeper dive into some of the other nuances of how we created the bill, who was a part of the process, and some of the other things we anticipate the bill being able to do. But I'll be able to do a deeper dive into those particular issues once you ask other questions and once we hear from the other panelists.
Thank you so much, and we'll be coming back to this, but I really just want to echo, it's wonderful to hear leadership have humility, and that is amazing, but also it's more transparent and more true when people understand that the way we get things done isn't by one person standing up there and saying, I'm getting this done, but by a community of people working together, passing the baton, and keeping things moving even when it takes long periods of time. That is a constant mechanism of change, and it isn't individual, it's collective. So thank you for sharing that and really kind of explaining the purpose of this bill, why it came through. I'm gonna jump around a little. No, I wanna go to you next because in a way, the Prison Society is a part of that system in the state. So can you give a little framing about what the Prison Society does and then why your organization is really supporting this work in the city?
Certainly. Yeah, thank you for that question. The thing that makes us super unique, aside from being incredibly old, is that we are a separate nonprofit. We're a non-governmental agency, but state law specifically says, excuse me, specifically says that members of the Prison Society have a right to enter into and meet privately with people in prisons across Pennsylvania, both city and state prisons. And so this is a core part of what we do, and specifically in terms of helping people address issues they're experiencing around conditions or treatment inside those prisons. But we're also limited, right? One of the other key things we do that intersects with this is we have a family helpline. My colleague who's here tonight supervises a team. Last year they responded to 13,000 letters and phone calls from people in prison and their loved ones. This is a huge volume. Back in spring of 2021, when the pandemic was in full swing, we saw a doubling of those calls and letters that were coming out of Philadelphia jail specifically. Alarm bells were going off everywhere. And so one thing that we've been engaged in since then is doing monitoring walkthroughs of the jails, interviewing people at random, putting together what we're hearing and seeing and reporting it out so that folks like Councilmember Thomas as well as the general public have a clearer eye to what's going on. But at the end of the day, we don't control the prisons, right? We have a right to meet with the people in them, but we don't necessarily have a right to look into logbooks, investigations, camera footage, you know, behind the scenes into budgets, things of this nature. And so I think Philadelphia has a really unique opportunity to do something that, unlike anywhere else in the state, probably unlike anywhere in the country, between building this board and having this unique organization like our own that can work in tandem, right, share experiences, really provide true transparency to the public institution, because at the end of the day, that's what prisons are, right? These are public institutions that is the most closed off from public view, that is the hardest to understand and have a real finger on the pulse of what's going on. Is there abuse? Is there mismanagement? And what's doing well as well, right? And shine a light on where there is good practice as well, and hold those things up as examples.
Thank you for that. And that's such a powerful thing, because transparency is the root of how our system works. That things are clear, things are transparent, we understand the rules that we are to follow, and we're held accountable. But I think that shining the light is so important, because it's also, because it's such a closed off system, you have a high level of vulnerability. And also because of the impact that incarceration has on people, an even higher level of vulnerability. And also, we're in a site that was framed in the idea that human dignity was in everybody, that there was a light in everybody. And so, Morgan, the question that I have for you is, what is that power of citizen oversight to shine that light? How come citizens are able to do this in a stronger way than government officials that may be connected to the system?
So I can definitely say, so as Lauren mentioned, I have a proper 9 to 5 with American Association for Cancer Research. Everybody's been touched by cancer. Everybody also has been touched by our prison system, one way or another. And with the League of Women Voters, you know, we focus on those who are disenfranchised. It started with women, it's developed into so much more. And I think giving our citizens that opportunity and that space to have their voice heard. I mean, honestly, Councilmember Thomas, I didn't know that story about a constituent coming to y'all and saying that. And as a fundraiser, I use survivor stories all the time. So that's a story I'm gonna use somewhere else. Not in the cancer research space, but somewhere else. And that's just so impactful, because so many times, so many Philadelphians, like Lawrence, I'm born and raised, I'm third generation. So many Philadelphians feel disenfranchised. We feel like our voice isn't heard. You know, you can look at the numbers that come out by the percentage who comes out to vote. You know, when numbers get to 22% of people who come out to vote in elections, that's scary. That's people who feel like, why? You know, and with the League, we talk to everyone. So we talk to all ages, race, colors, and creed. And recently we were talking to Gen Z, and they feel so disenfranchised. They feel like they don't have a voice. They can't say anything. And so that's our job, to let them know they can say something. They can have their voice heard. And even if it's, you know, again, the elected officials, but also changing a charter, like, that's amazing. I always understood the questions, and I remember my mom and dad always saying, you gotta answer the questions, don't forget about the questions. But just really seeing that it started from us. It started from a Philadelphian, and now it's gone so far, and how we can help those in our community, especially when you think about our currently or previously incarcerated family members, being able to help them and let them know that we love them, we respect them, and we respect their voice is so, so important and impactful.
You just clearly made that a perfect loop of, it starts with the citizen and it goes all the way back to the vote and saying, how can you engage? And that is so powerful. And I think it's really important to talk about, how does our community and how does government and citizens work together? How do community members and people in this country work with government agencies to do more? And I think this is a perfect mixture of those two. So Councilmember Thomas, can you help it kind of explain to us what were some of the oppositions around it? What were some of the concerns? And then also, why do we put a system like this into place? I dove deep today in this research around the Scandinavian prisons, and the Scandinavian prisons are held up around the world as being like the best. They are the most, centered on human dignity. They do all of these great things, and they have a people's oversight committee of people in their community. So when we look at this and these checks and balances that we can put in with citizens' eyes in there and people's eyes in this, is it just about finding what's wrong, or is it also about, going back to healthcare, preventative measures? So tell us a little bit about where the struggles were to get here, and then, because it really just to clear the air and make sure people understand that this is all the positive reasons we want to put this in.
Yeah, so I think you kind of did a great job of talking about like the
Too long.
Hey, no, it was great as far as talking about the positives and why we need this, right? Like this is something that we feel like can protect inmates, can protect the people who work in the prisons, all stakeholders, right? Because when we seen some of our worst incidents and when we seen our prisons, at least at its worst time since I was an elected official, everybody was in danger, right? It wasn't just about one specific demographic. There were concerns coming from everybody. And so where we are right now, who's against it? I don't want to say who's against it because
Or the reasons they may be against it.
you can't name your haters, right? Then I'm giving when I'm gonna right no. Seriously, I think so. I think that the first concerned group of people are the people who represent the folks who work in the prisons, and I think that their concerns are legit. I think that when you think about the circumstances that we have in the prisons, they've improved significantly since COVID, but we still have a lot more work to do. And if I'm a person who's just waking up every day, 9 to 5, trying to do my job and take care of my family, and all of these issues exist in my place of employment that I have no control over, the last thing that you should be doing is focusing on trying to get me in a gotcha moment instead of trying to fix these issues. And I think that was the concern that was communicated from us, to us, from some of the union representation. And I think that we've been able to continue to be in dialogue with them to try to figure out what is the happy compromise. So we can come up with a system and an oversight board that accomplishes all those things you said, but at the same time is fair and just, because that is an important component of this. Outside of that, there's always going to be folks who are advocating against anything where you're trying to do significant change. We kind of just, block that out. It doesn't really bother us. It doesn't bother me. I think the union concern is one that's credible. It's one that's legit, and we've had significant dialogue with them over the last year or so. I think that if you're paying attention to like local government, which most folks don't, you know that our municipal unions have seen significant leadership change. And that's been a challenge for us, right? Because you deal with one leadership regime and you're having a conversation, and then that leadership regime changes. And so you got to go back to scratch. And then you also wonder, will the new regime have the same priorities as the old regime? Will they feel it? So that's been a huge hurdle for us. It's just dealing with the change in leadership from the union regimes. And so we've been trying our best to essentially navigate that. We've seen some wards in the city of Philadelphia. This is a ballot question. Anybody who don't know, ward leaders and committee people come together to make endorsements on candidates as well as recommendations on ballot questions. So we've had some wards who've been indifferent as it relates to this ballot question because they feel like it's more government bureaucracy. There's already a board. Why do we need another board? And just for the record, this board would essentially eliminate the current board that's there. So you wouldn't have two boards. And so we've tried our best to do outreach to ward leaders, committee people, and organizations to be able to let them know what we're trying to do and encourage them to either support it or just remain on the sideline and not take a position as it relates to this particular issue. We had a working group for months that consisted of the mayor, the prison commissioner, union representation in and out, but more importantly, Amistad Law. And Amistad Law is the organization who kind of spearheaded Amistad what? You say it, it don't matter.
Abolitionist.
Abolitionist.
The
Thank you.
Abolitionist Law Center. Don't worry.
Abolitionist Law Center. I'm sorry.
We understand the history connection
Abolitionist Law
perfectly
Center.
on that.
I apologize. So actually, Salim Holbrook is the person who kind of went to Councilmember Gim to really start this stuff. So we were in a working group with my ledge team, and that's why I'm looking at them, because they was in a working group. They led this process for months. And it was a very tenuous conversation because it was something that everybody in the working group didn't feel like we needed. And I think when you talk about, and I'll close out with this, when you talk about politics, for me, I always feel like the best legislation, the best laws, the best bills are bills where nobody got everything they wanted, but everybody got something. And that's politics. Politics is about compromise and negotiations. And a lot of times people don't like that because when you're advocating for something, you can't compromise. And I agree with that. When I'm fighting and I'm advocating, compromise is not an option. But when I'm legislating, compromise is mandatory.
I might actually have to make T-shirts that say that. I kid you not. Compromise is extremely hard for people, and they walk into it thinking they're going to win. And this is not a battle. This is not a fight. We're going to move society forward. And that was brilliant. That was a beautiful way to say it and really powerful to be able to say, how do we move things forward? What is the best for the overall goal? And what are you going to let go of or hold to something different? I think it's also fascinating, too, to think about people coming in as an oversight commission will also see deficits that support the staff within a prison system. So there is not picking sides. This is how do we make a better system and where are there issues or opportunities to make change before something happens.
Absolutely.
So
100%.
reframe it. Wonderful. Now I think that leads perfectly. It's all really about understanding, like understanding what it is, what it does, how will the people do this work, and how it will support and really move people forward. And I think that's perfect. Morgan, could you talk a little bit about how we're gonna get the community to understand all of this intricate detail? And because I used to be on the League of Women Voters too, because all good people go there, and the city level and the state level, could you tell us a little bit about Vote 411? Can they find that there? Where other resources they can find this?
So definitely. So one of the biggest things since I've joined the league has been education. I am the child of 2 Philadelphia public school teachers. My mother taught elementary school, my father taught high school. It's always been about education nonstop. And the league has done such a great job under Lauren's leadership, under Melissa before me, under myself, of really teaching our constituents what's going on. We are extremely nonpartisan. I just want you to come out and vote. I want the bodies in the poll booth at this point. I want you to mail in your ballot, but you can't mail it in, you can't go to the polls if you don't know what's going on, if you're not educated on it. And so I think one of the greatest things that 411 does, at Vote 411, as well as C70, is they break down the questions. And they break down the questions as well as who's running for office in ways that, and sorry, I'm putting my cancer research hat on, in layman's terms, and so the lay person can understand. And it really removes that barrier. It removes that scariness that comes when you think about politics or politicians, especially for, like I said, the disenfranchised folks, and we're trying to enter into the old boys club in a way sometimes. It puts a seat at the table. It gives them entry in. And so I think not only with the league being here, but working with these amazing organizations, working with C70, working with Eastern State, working with so many great groups allows us to get our message to other people. And one of the biggest things that we've strived to do, my voter services chair, Jane, has really, we strive to be in communities that don't look like us. So I'm a Black woman from West Philadelphia, born and raised. I go to other communities that don't look like me. So you're gonna see me in parts of South Philly that don't look like me. You're gonna see me in parts of Northeast that don't look like me. Jane is a white woman in South Philly. She goes to West Philly all the time on 48th Street and makes sure, come register to vote, here we go, y'all, come on, let me teach you about things. We go places so that all our people are represented. All of them have the opportunity to learn. And like I said, really collaborating with like-minded groups that want to push things forward and really want to, I love what you said, everybody has to win. Everybody's going to get something. You're going to get something whether you like it or not, you're going to get something. And so being able to be with these folks to allow our constituents to get something is what we really strive for.
Wonderful, and I just want to definitely shout out to Committee of 70, does these amazing How Your Government Works tools and online programs that really break down these questions. Their social media is fantastic as well, and it really breaks it down. So when you're home and you're like, I really like this conversation, I want to share it with somebody else, check out the tools of League of Women Voter 411, check out all that's on the council's website. There's a hearing around it that was really fascinating to dive deep into multiple times, and check out C70's on site and on their social media and pass it forward and pay it forward. The Prison Society is also a powerful tool to get the word out within communities, because when we talk about incarceration, it's the impact of incarceration. And other members have said it earlier, it impacts whole communities. It impacts kids, it impacts family members. The impact is so high, but we're not having these conversations. So no, I really want you to help ground us in not only the impact of a prison oversight commission to do what you do and to make people feel safe about their loved ones, but also the impact that it has when people from home come into an incarcerated setting and are there to be a part of the system to help make it better, to say, we can always make things better, and we need to do that now.
Yeah, I think that, that's a fundamental piece of incarceration that often gets overlooked is that, people in prison are parts of communities, regardless of the fact that they're behind a prison wall. They're part of communities inside of the prisons and on the outside still. And what happens to them has a radiating impact. And the way they're treated has a radiating impact. There's about 62,000 people in prisons in Pennsylvania right now, excluding the federal system, actually, so it's more than that. But over 115,000 move through our prisons every year. Because remember, a lot of people go in on short stays. And the way people are treated, again, by these public institutions impacts the way they see their government, the way it impacts the way they see, is there a place for me in society? It impacts the way they see the system writ large, right? And it also impacts their family's experience of all of these things. The majority of people who go to prison come home, right, at some point. And, and at the end of the day, these are government institutions funded with government dollars acting on behalf of the people, right? And so I think it says a lot to the people inside, A, if they're treated poorly or without basic dignity, and B, if nobody stands up for them and says, hey, I don't care what this person may or may not have done, it's not right to treat them inhumanely. Our society doesn't co-sign that, right? And so I think that's a big part of why it's important to have citizen engagement. It's part of why it's so important to have public education and real awareness of that at a gritty level, what the experience is like inside. And then, connecting back to an earlier question, it also impacts staff. Corrections officers have drastically shorter lifespans than everyone else. Their rates of suicide are really high. Their rates of committing violence against intimate partners is really high. And it's not because they're evil, right? They're no different than anyone else necessarily, but they're also working within this system that is chronically underfunded, chronically deprived of basic resources, and the same with anything else. It is a basic tenet of good government that you need regulation and you need oversight. That is not unique to prisons, but prisons are unique in their lack thereof. And so I think this is fundamental to just democracy, I would argue. But to the council member's point, the rising tide can raise the boats for the staff as well. I've met plenty of staff members who are beleaguered, who are on mandated second shifts, who are exhausted. They've been inside of environments with terrible air and no light for 15 and 16 hours, dealing with people who, are directing all kinds of anger at them because the guys and the women in the prisons, they're pissed off. They're not happy, and they're yelling and this, and they're done. They're exhausted, they're done. They're like, you know what? I don't care. I'm just going to lock myself in my security booth and give up. Now, that's not right. But it's not enough to say that's not right. You got to understand where that comes from and start untying that system. So I think better oversight isn't going to fix everything, but it is a crucial, necessary first step to get us where we need.
And I think that's really powerful because when we talk about, again, going back to that shining the light on systems that are very closed, we've also seen the courts over the years be very differential to the choices that are made in prisons and around prison cases because they're like, oh no, that's a special setting. They do that to schools and they do that to the prisons as well. So it is an area where that information coming out can help really portray a different picture and a more holistic picture to make better choices on funding, to make better choices on policy, to really move that needle forward and to help people. And I really appreciate how you roll that around and look at the entire ecosystem, everybody who's affected, and how to help people. Now, one question, I'm going to you all next. So we'll go to questions next, get your ready. One question that I have is, what's the criteria to be on this? Because I feel like we might have some people that will really want to join this. So do you have thoughts on how they're going to be chosen?
So the reality is that we haven't gotten to that point yet because we needed to pass a ballot measure.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can't start picking out my new clothes for the wedding until my wife say yes. I gotta get her to say yes first. All right, so we.
Well, you don't know me very well then.
Yeah. Gotta focus on we the people, and when we get that part done, we will continue to meet with the working group to describe the criteria. The one thing that we did negotiate was that we did not want someone who currently worked in the prison to be on the board, right? We just felt like the one thing we did try to do is eliminate any possibility of built-in conflicts. So that was one criteria. So we haven't necessarily talked about what you need, what your resume should look like to be on the board, but we did negotiate some folks who we felt like, for ethical and credible reasons, probably should automatically be not qualified to be on the board. So we do have a couple of those things. But as it relates to qualifications, after we get over this hurdle on election day, speaking into existence that we're able to have some level of success, the working group, which consists of my office, the mayor, the mayor's office, the prison commissioner, thank you, the Defenders Association, Keisha
Pennsylvania
Hutch is
Prison
here.
Society.
Prison Society. Keisha's been great. Amistad Law, absolutely. Those organizations together will decide what that criteria will be. And I can tell you right now, I don't have a real stake in that. I don't really have a preference as to what the criteria should be. I think that the direction that we've been going in, which is allowing the advocates to really lead the negotiations, right? Like, I think if you talk to a lot of the advocates, they'll say, like, this is, like, these folks are at the table. They're meeting with the admin. They're meeting with the prison commissioner. So it's not me dictating anything. So we'll see with what the collective says, what the coalition says, and whatever the group votes on, that's what I'm going to support, and that's the direction that I will go in. So help us get it across the finish line, and, you know, we'll all have a honeymoon together, right?
I love it. I think it's such a powerful thing that we can do as leaders is set the table and get out of the way for the right people to be at the table to make those decisions. So thank you so much for that. Morgan, real quick, we'll do a real quick speed round. If you were saying what kind of criteria that you think would be important to be at that table for the people in this commission, any thoughts of criteria that you would lay out?
I think partially, and I did read the bill, having someone who is currently or formerly incarcerated from a Philadelphia prison system is so impactful and so important. The work I did at Girl Scouts of Southeastern Pennsylvania was working on a program called Girl Scouts Beyond Bars, where their mothers were currently or previously incarcerated at Riverside Correctional. And twice a month, we would take these girls to see their mothers. And it's impactful because I heard these women's stories firsthand. And it was stories I never heard. It was different. But it wasn't so different that they were women just like me, going through something, loving on their children, loving on their spouses, their partners, their own mothers. And I think having that firsthand knowledge and that firsthand voice is so impactful.
Which wasn't my idea.
Okay. Well, you guys, other folks got good ideas.
It was a great idea.
But it's something I can honestly say, again, back to my 9 to 5, for all the research grants we do, we make sure there's a patient advocate on the review committee saying that this research will impact my cure. This research will impact my medicine. And so I think having that firsthand advocate voice would be so huge and so amazing once you get to that other side of the threshold.
And I think that's a very powerful thing in Philadelphia, too. The disability community in Philadelphia really flipped the table and that narrative. We talk here about our values being having people with lived experience making decisions at every level of the organization. But the disability community in Philadelphia and across the country really laid the stage of nothing about us without us. And that's the line that's always like, we really need to make sure, because you have a different lens and window into it. We talk about people that came here when Eastern State was being built, and when Charles Dickens came here, everybody leading up to it, all these great framers and founders from all around the world, Lafayette, all these people said it was an amazing experiment. Charles Dickens comes, and he's like, this is the worst we can do to humankind. The general idea, what's the difference? He watched his father incarcerated. He watched what happened to his father in jail. He knew what it felt like personally. And that changes the conversation and lets you see a bigger viewpoint. So Noah, before we go to the audience for questions, kind of what are your thoughts on who would you put at the table, or criteria? It doesn't have to be a person.
Sure. Yeah, one thing worth saying is in this working group the council member's been talking about, there are at least 2 formerly incarcerated people that are part of that architecture conversation in the first place also. So to that point at all levels. And I don't remember who said it first, but I think everyone was universal in agreement that this was a necessary component of the board. I think at the end of the day, the crucial thing is real diversity, not just racial, although certainly racial, but geographic, different parts of the city represented, different age ranges, and different skill sets, different temperaments, talents, and convictions, right, to quote from something. One of the key functions of this board is that they're going to be having monthly public meetings that the prison commissioner is compelled to appear at and answer questions and be in conversation. And so you need people representing all of us, right? Not one segment, because as we've all been saying, incarceration touches almost everyone in our society. And so having those various perspectives, but also those various skill sets that can look into and think in different ways and challenge preconceived notions and think about how do we move this system to a better place.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's go to audience Q&A. And so Joel, if you have a question, just raise your hand and Joel will come over and hold the mic for you. So just let us know your question. And on that side, Noah, and again, I'm a history nerd, so I have to just share it as we wait for this. So Abraham Lincoln put together, it's that Doris Kearns Goodwin book, which is fantastic, Team of Rivals. And that was the idea that everybody at the table would have different skill sets coming to the table, and together you make a whole picture, a whole tapestry. Okay, go right ahead.
Hello. Thank you. So let me see. I'm going to be very proud to vote for this referendum, I think, in the primary. Like, I went to Haverford College, and so I kind of got, like, immersed in the Quaker world and, like, learning about Eastern State and, like, all that kind of work that, folks like that have been doing in this country for a while. So it feels very full circle, kind of. And, like, I was out with ALC, at, like, CCF on State Road for, like, rallies and stuff when it was, really bad in COVID. So it's, like, really great to see that this is happening. I'm also a member of DC 33. I work in the libraries. And so I understand, Councilmember Thomas, like, the grief you might have about, like, all of our, shenanigans. And then I just think that it's interesting that, with the other oversight board we have, I think, like CPOC with the police, I would hope that, like, the movement that's happening around this prison oversight board can, give more, I guess, like, support to CPOC, or just the principle that, like, all the stakeholders have to come to compromises, including the labor aspect, like the unions, because I think, like, just the situation with CPOC, there needs to be more agreement on, like, the mission of that oversight board. And just my question is, like, do you think there's appetite for more transparency, like with the school board perhaps? Can we maybe elect school board members in the future? Or maybe an oversight board over the school board? Thank you.
You may not want to do that to school board members. Little insider joke for us. Yes.
So I'm a teacher by trade. So when I
Big round of applause for that. This is why he gets it.
So when I was talking about the unions and I was like scanning the room, I kind of seen your face and I was like, and I'm looking at you and I'm like, I'll probably be all right. He's not old enough to be in a union. Little did I know, right? So first of all, congratulations and thank you for your service. 33 was a little harder than 47 because of the change in leadership. Clearly, you know what I'm talking about. But I do appreciate both AFSCME unions for their willingness to come to the table to be a part of their conversation. And I think most importantly, I appreciate their passion for wanting to protect their members, right? Because that's their job. That's what they do. And when you look at 33 especially, 33 is the lowest paid city workers in the city of Philadelphia. So I'm never going to be mad at people who are fighting for quality folks, great people. And so that's that side. I hear what you're saying about the police board. So the police board itself, it's difficult for that board to get teeth because of the contract between the police union and the city. And I think what a lot of times people don't realize is that contract is often not necessarily negotiated, but the outcomes are determined by an arbitrator, not necessarily the city itself. So that board is going to be It's going to be what it is, but it's going to be difficult for that board to do what this board is doing because of the contract issues, right? This board is looking to oversee an institution. That board is looking to oversee a group of employees. And as a union person, you could recognize the difference between the two. Now, that other board is definitely looking to oversee an institution. So I'll be honest with you, since I started running for city council at the young, ripe age of 26, I'm much older than that right now, the first thing I campaigned on was, and again, I'm 26 years old, I'm a teacher. The first thing I campaigned on was getting rid of the school board. And I still, in my heart, believe that today. I'm the chair of the Education Committee on City Council, and the idea of having an appointed school board is just backwards. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. Let me give you 2 reasons why. Number 1, people need a say-so when it comes to holding someone accountable for the education of their child. And the average constituent don't realize that the only person you really could hold accountable for that is the mayor. No one's going to choose a mayor based on education. That's crazy, ain't it? It's never going to happen. No one's going to choose a mayor based on education. We would need a complete catastrophe, and I don't even know what that is because we're already living in one right now. We have $6.7 billion worth of damages to the school district of Philadelphia, and a superintendent who just introduced a budget that will force him to dip into about $300 of his savings account. $300 million, goodness gracious, $300 million. So that emergency exists right now, and no one cares. No one's talking about it. On top of that, being a school board member requires you to vote on things that's similar to what we vote on. Let me give you an example. If someone comes to city council and they want some type of tax break or, I don't know, tax abatement on land or a building or some type of zoning issue, right? Often, the school board has to vote on that too. Well, I have a budget of a good amount of money where I pay smart people who sit in a room with me, and we collectively decide how I should vote. School board members don't have that. They're volunteers. They have 9 to 5s. So you mean to tell me that you're able to make an educated vote in a matter of 3 hours on something that it took my team a week to dissect? We're not stupid. So it ain't us that takes a week to dissect this material. This is how complex the material is. So we're now asking school board members, and I know this is not the conversation tonight, but we're asking school board members to vote on things that any practical person knows they didn't even have time to read it. That's on a consistent basis. So because of the time required to make educated votes, I think that the school board should at least be a hybrid board, half elected, half appointed. Let them represent the 10 districts in the city of Philadelphia, right? The ones that are elected, we could do, what we say, five elected members that represent 2 council districts, right? 4 appointed members by the mayor and city council, and that's your 9-member board. And the most important thing, they need to be paid for the position. Poor people can't serve on the school board of Philadelphia. You can't. How? I gotta work. I'm working 9 to 5, and then at 6 o'clock, I either got my kids or my second job. A poor person can't do it, and that's not fair. Public education shouldn't be a space for the elite.
Big round.
So sorry to come right back at you, Councilmember Thomas. So I think you said in the beginning with this board, it's going to be different because it has like a budget to it or something like that. Can you just talk a little bit more about like what that budget is and like what that does compared to the current board that's in place?
So the current board doesn't have a budget. The new board will have a budget. The budget will be a % of the prison's budget that will be mandatory to be given to the board, and the board will be able to put together positions. There has to be an executive director, and that executive director needs a budget to be able to investigate things when complaints come to him. So it would not be a paid board, but the board would be able to hire an executive director, and that person would be paid, and they would be given a budget to essentially do the work of the board. Yes, sir.
So this question is for Mr. Barth. I think when you were talking about the CO experience and the benefit that they might have from oversight, there is a collective feeling of recognition because some of us may not have thought about that before. And in the context of voting for ballot measure number 3, what do you wish that more people in Philadelphia knew about the prison experience and why this ballot measure and more oversight is needed?
Yeah, that's a really good question. She asked in singular. I'm like, well, I have a laundry list. I mean, I'm going to ramble for a couple seconds, and hopefully some clarity will come out of this. I mean, I think part of it, and this connects back to the thing with the COs, is that it is complicated, and it's also so simple at the same time, and that makes it, like, cognitively that much harder to digest, right? And I think that's part of why oversight is so beneficial for the COs, because if you're running, like, I do not envy that job, right? Our current mayor didn't create this mess. Our current prison commissioner didn't create this mess. It was a problem long before they both got here. But unwinding it, coming up with solutions, it can seem almost impossible because the problems are everywhere you look in there, right? Understaffing. Fortunately, at least for now, COVID is in decent shape, but that was a nightmare for people running prisons, right? Understaffing, old buildings, small budgets, people like me harassing you, telling you to do better, right? Drugs coming in and out all the time, terrible conditions, problems with transportation back and forth to court and to state prisons, backing things up, too many people being sent to the prison in the first place, and they have no control. Whoever comes in that door, they got to take them. And it's almost like, where do you start, right? And I think that's part of why it's important to have an outside set of eyes and ears to sort of start picking this apart and looking at things and making suggestions for remuneration. So yeah, what is it that, you know, I want voters to understand? I mean, I think part of it is if you really understand the depths of how bad it can be in some of these places, you know, using that as a way to tap into people's empathy, because part of the problem with prisons is because they're so closed off and out of view and over there, and you just have this sort of general sense of, yeah, well, the people in there are bad people. It's easy enough to kind of forget about it and move on with your life, right? Because maybe you got 2 jobs or a job and a volunteership and a kid and everything else, and like, do you really have time to digest the depths of deprivation in prisons? No, I'm busy doing da-da-da-da-da-da. But if you look at it, you know, and understand that it is not an uncommon experience in the Philadelphia prisons to be locked into a cell with another human being for days at a time, with no phone calls, no showers, no nothing, right? Getting served trays of food that I could eat 3 of easily in one sitting if they weren't so gross. I've seen the food enough times. I'm sorry, it's disgusting. It is undignified to serve that to another human being. You know, and to start to see how wild it gets in there. Nobody. Doesn't matter. I don't care what you did. That's you know, that is beneath us as a society. And I think once people, and this happens, you know, part of our work is we occasionally bring lawmakers and people inside. A couple years ago, you know, we brought 6 members of the current iteration of the board inside the prison. They asked to accompany us because they didn't have access despite being the board members. This is how dysfunctional the current board is. One of them quit very publicly in disgust, wrote an op-ed. That's a very powerful read. But they got magnetized, you know. Several members of Councilmember Thomas's team asked to come with us before they started on this journey. And it really impacted them. You know, we've taken other lawmakers. It's different once you really, it's hard to convey the depths of how bad it can be.
I think it's really powerful when we think about that, as we have to frame it is, you know, whatever way you come at this, the question is, do you believe that our government is allowed to treat somebody this way? What is that level? It's our government. It's our choice to control that government, to say what to do and what not within a system of laws and rules. But at the end of the day, is the government allowed to treat somebody like this? And we have rules and regulations that say no, that would go against it. And then how do we ensure as people and as citizens that doesn't happen? So we're gonna wrap up now. I wanna thank our panelists so much. Big round of applause. Do you want last words?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to you. I think you did a great job as a moderator today. I just wanted to commend you. Yeah.
And I just like to remember that there's so much work that happens up here every single day with these organizations. The Abolitionist Law Center, another good friend of Eastern State, and all of this work. But we come back to the idea that, when we think about Eastern State as a historical site, it's not just a historical site, it's a platform for change, and that only works because you're all here going to make that change out there. So I want to thank you all very much. I think I have a person over here that wants to say the final word real quick, because I think everybody's ready to go out to baseball and check out all the partners.
Just real fast, I'm from the Defender Association. We're a member of the working group that Councilman Thomas mentioned. We brought with us a number of summaries of the most recent Prison Monitor report about the conditions at the Philadelphia County Jail, as well as a plain English version of what the ballot question is. I will put them on these two windowsills on the way out. I don't have a lot of them, but please pick them up if you're interested. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful night.
I know you're not. Oh, because he works at Penn. I know where. But his name is Ben Albalda. And I was like, you